Have you ever felt like the world was conspiring against your dreams? Like every step forward was followed by an even bigger stumble? Sofia knew exactly what it was like to carry that weight, and her story might hold the key to understanding what to do when life throws its biggest challenges at us. Today, we'll dive into Sofia's journey, a young woman who faced major injustices, disappointments, and moments of deep loneliness, but found a way to rise up and discover her true strength. Her story is a powerful lesson in resilience and faith. If you stick around until the end, you'll see how Sofia, despite all the adversity, found a way to overcome and transform her life. And who knows, her journey might inspire you to do the same, no matter what obstacles you're facing right now. So, let's dive into the beginning of this emotional story and find out what led Sofia to face one of her biggest challenges. Introduction. In a small, picturesque town nestled between green hills and softly flowing rivers, lived Sofia, a young woman whose heart was as pure as the fresh morning breeze. Sofia grew up on a simple farm with the sound of chickens scratching the ground and the sweet scent of lavender flowers mixed with the earthy smell of damp soil. Life, though modest, was full of meaning for her. Sofia always believed that true wealth wasn't found in material things, but in moments of affection, kind words, and small acts of kindness. Her family life revolved around Grandma Helen, who had raised her since Sofia's parents died in a tragic accident when she was very young. Grandma Helen, an elderly woman, was known for her wisdom and unwavering faith. She always told Sofia that while life was full of challenges, God always paved the way for those who kept a pure heart and persevered in their dreams. Evenings on the farm were filled with long conversations by the fireplace, where Sofia listened closely to her grandmother's stories about hard times and overcoming challenges, always laced with biblical teachings. Despite all the financial struggles they faced, Sofia had a dream. She dreamed of leaving the small town one day to study in the big city, to learn enough so she could return and make a difference in the lives of the people around her. She didn't desire wealth or status. Her only wish was to help others, especially those who, like her, faced daily hardships. This burning desire kept her spirit lifted, even in the darkest moments. But not everything in Sofia's life was bright with kindness. There was a shadow that hung over her existence. Laura, the daughter of the richest man in town. Laura was an arrogant young woman, used to getting everything she wanted. Unlike Sofia, Laura had never known what it meant to struggle or suffer. To her, life was a game where people were mere pawns, and Sofia, with her simplicity and kindness, was an easy target. Laura secretly envied how people admired Sofia, though she would never admit it openly. The tension between them grew as the years passed. Laura couldn't stand the light that Sofia brought with her humble ways, and whenever she could, she made sure to publicly ridicule her. Sofia, on the other hand, never fought back. She believed that God taught forgiveness, and Grandma Helen advised her not to carry bitterness in her heart. Pride is the downfall of many, my dear. Let God heal the wounds the world inflicts on you, her grandmother would say with a gentle look. The farm they lived on was small but cozy. Sofia and Grandma Helen supported themselves with the little they could grow, selling their products at the local market. Sofia loved animals, especially the horses, with whom she spent hours talking while feeding them. In the simplicity of her life, she found joy in small things. The bird songs at dawn, the smell of the earth after rain, and the long walks along the trails that wound through the hills. However, a feeling of unease began to fill Sofia's heart. Something was about to change. The peace that had surrounded her, the sense of safety in her little world, was slowly giving way to a quiet discomfort. Little did she know that life was about to test her in ways she could never have imagined. An injustice that would shake her faith and challenge her character was on the horizon, and her only hope would be to hold on to the teachings Grandma Helen had passed down to her. This was the calm before the storm. Sofia was still surrounded by love and familiarity, but destiny had a hard road full of pain and challenges in store for her. But as in all great stories, it is in the darkest moments that the true light shines. Sofia would need to face everything that lay ahead with courage, faith, and, above all, hope. Chapter 1. The Shadow of Injustice. Sofia woke up with the first ray of sunlight streaming through the window of her simple room. The distant chirping of birds and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen, courtesy of Grandma Helen, were comforting constants. But today, something felt different in the air. A weight seemed to press down on her shoulders, as if something was about to happen. Sofia couldn't explain why, but the tightness in her chest grew as the morning wore on. She decided to ignore the feeling and busied herself with her daily chores on the farm. As she fed the animals, Sofia noticed the elegant figure of Laura approaching from a distance. It was unusual for Laura, with her life of luxury and privilege, to show up around here, but the rich young woman seemed to have something on her mind. With firm steps and a haughty expression, Laura approached the farm as if she owned the place. Despite her suspicions, Sofia smiled politely and walked towards her. With every step Laura took, the shadow of uncertainty grew in Sofia's heart. "I need to talk to you, Sofia," Laura said, her voice dripping with contempt. Sofia, always patient, nodded, waiting to hear the reason for the unexpected visit. Laura, with a malicious smile, revealed her intention. "I know you're trying to get a scholarship to study in the city. I've got some influence, you know. I can make sure you never get anything." Laura's words felt like daggers to Sofia's heart. Everything she had dreamed of, her deepest desire, was being threatened by someone who had no idea what it was like to live with so little. Sofia tried to keep her composure, but tears began to well up in her eyes. She had never done anything to deserve such cruelty. She had always believed that if she did good, good would come back to her. But at that moment, it felt like all her efforts, all her kindness, meant nothing in the face of Laura's malice. "Why would you do this?" Sofia asked, her voice trembling. "What have I ever done to deserve this?" Laura, with a cold laugh, responded, "You didn't do anything, Sofia, and that's exactly why. People like you always think they deserve more just because they're good. I just want to remind you where your place is." With those words, Laura turned and walked away, leaving Sofia standing in the dust, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. The world around her seemed darker, and for the first time, Sofia felt powerless in the face of life. Sofia returned home with a heavy heart. How could she tell her grandmother what had happened? Grandma Helen always told her to trust in God, but at that moment, Sofia felt betrayed by life. The dream of going to the city, of studying and changing her reality, was slipping through her fingers. As she walked into the house, her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to hide them. "What happened, my dear?" Grandma Helen asked, noticing Sofia's troubled face. Sometimes life tests us not to break us, but to strengthen us in ways we never imagined. Chapter 2. The Wave of Despair. Sofia looked at her grandmother with teary eyes, but tried, in vain, to hide her pain. "Nothing, Grandma. Just a tough day," she replied, avoiding eye contact with Grandma Helen. But her grandmother's wisdom, gained over many years, wouldn't allow her to accept that answer without probing further. Grandma Helen slowly approached, placed a hand on Sofia's shoulder, and guided her to one of the kitchen chairs. "You know you can tell me anything, dear. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." The young woman, still feeling the weight of Laura's words echoing in her mind, broke down in tears. Everything she had held inside came pouring out, and between sobs, she told her grandmother what Laura had said. Grandma Helen listened to every word in silence, not interrupting. As Sofia poured out her fears of losing the only chance to fulfill her dream, the thought that Laura could somehow ruin her chances of studying in the city filled her with deep despair. When she finished, Sofia felt empty, as if all her hope had been drained. She looked to her grandmother for some kind of answer, some comfort that could ease the pain. "Sofia, my dear, you can't let someone else's pride poison your soul. Remember what I've always taught you. Goodness always prevails, even if the road is hard and takes time to reveal itself." But at that moment, Grandma Helen's wise words felt distant. Sofia wanted to believe, but the fear that Laura could truly destroy everything she had worked for was overwhelming. She spent the rest of the day in silence, lost in her thoughts, while helping with the farm chores. Each time she gazed out at the horizon, the dream of studying in the city seemed further and further out of reach. The following weeks brought a growing sense of hopelessness. Sofia avoided going to the market, fearing she'd run into Laura and be humiliated again. Her will to fight for her future was slipping away. She stopped talking about her plans to study, and the spark in her eyes, which always accompanied her conversations about the future, had faded. To neighbors and friends, Sofia seemed like the same kind and helpful young woman, but inside, she was fighting an intense emotional battle. One morning, while feeding the horses, Sofia was surprised by an unexpected visitor. It was Michael, a young man from the neighboring town, who had always admired Sofia's courage and determination. He knew about her dream of going to the city, and after noticing her absence at the market and the change in her behavior, he decided to check on her. "Sofia, are you okay?" Michael asked, his tone filled with genuine concern. "You haven't been yourself lately." Sofia, reluctant to open her heart once again, tried to brush off Michael's concern with a weak smile. But Michael, persistent, wasn't convinced. "I know something's going on, and I want to help. You don't have to face this alone." Michael's words touched something deep inside Sofia, and she felt a small spark of hope reignite. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had thought. But despite Michael's good intentions, Sofia was still consumed by doubt. What could he or anyone else do against someone like Laura? The feeling of powerlessness returned, and though she thanked Michael for his concern, she couldn't fully open up to him. The weight of fear and insecurity was still too heavy to share. When everything seems lost, remember, the storm that knocks you down may also be the one that teaches you how to fly. Chapter 3. The Darkness of Loneliness. Time passed, and although Michael had tried to reach out to Sofia again, she remained closed off in her world of sadness and loneliness. Each day, the feeling of isolation grew inside her, like a shadow consuming any hope that might still exist. Sofia no longer had the energy she once did and spent long hours alone, walking through the fields around the farm, trying to find an answer to the pain she felt. Grandma Helen, always attentive, could see that something deeper was happening with her granddaughter. Despite her encouraging words and constant prayers, Sofia seemed more and more distant, as if she were sinking into an emotional abyss from which she couldn't escape. Her grandmother knew that, as much as she wished to help, there were limits to what she could do. The real battle Sofia faced was within herself, a silent struggle between despair and faith. One afternoon, while walking along the winding trails in the hills, Sofia found herself standing before an old oak tree. This place, which used to bring her peace and tranquility, now seemed like a reminder of everything she was losing. She sat under the tree's shade and gazed at the horizon, feeling the weight of loneliness on her shoulders. Laura's words still echoed in her mind, reinforcing the idea that her dreams were unreachable. Maybe she's right, Sofia thought bitterly. Maybe I'm dreaming too big. Who am I to think I can leave here and change the world? Tears began to stream down her face, and she made no effort to stop them. The pain she had been holding back for so long finally found its way out, and Sofia cried like never before. Crying relieved the pressure in her chest, but it didn't bring answers to her questions. As the afternoon shadows grew longer, Sofia realized that her loneliness wasn't just physical, but emotional as well. She felt completely disconnected from everything and everyone. The faith that had once sustained her now seemed fragile. What troubled her most was a feeling that she was disappointing her grandmother and herself. Sofia had always believed she was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, but now, faced with harsh reality, her strength seemed to disappear. Grandma Helen, worried about Sofia's prolonged absence, went out to look for her granddaughter. She found her sitting under the old oak tree, her face still wet with tears. Her grandmother said nothing. She simply sat down beside her in silence. Sometimes, words weren't necessary. Just being present said it all. Sofia rested her head on her grandmother's shoulder, feeling, for the first time in a long while, a sense of true comfort. After some time in silence, Grandma Helen finally spoke. "My dear, you know that darkness doesn't last forever. The sun always rises, even after the longest nights." Sofia, her voice still shaky, replied, "I know, Grandma, but it's so hard. It feels like nothing I do is enough, and all my dreams are slipping through my fingers." Grandma Helen looked at her with tenderness and said, "The biggest dreams always face the biggest trials, but it's in those trials that we find our true strength." Her grandmother's words echoed in Sofia's mind as they walked back home. Maybe there was a way out, but in that moment, she couldn't see it yet. The loneliness and fear still consumed her. But there was a small spark of hope beginning to glow, fueled by Grandma Helen's unconditional love. Loneliness can be painful, but it's also the time when we reconnect with ourselves and discover what truly matters. Chapter 4. The Rescue of Hope. The days following her conversation with Grandma Helen brought a small but significant change in Sofia's heart. Though she still carried the weight of sadness, her grandmother's words had planted a seed of hope. She began to reflect on what she had lost. Not just the dream of studying in the city, but her faith in herself and in the path God had set for her. Maybe, Sofia thought, her struggle wasn't about defeating Laura or winning the scholarship, but about rediscovering her inner strength and faith. One day, while walking through town, Sofia ran into Michael again. This time, something in his gaze seemed different. There was a quiet determination in his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. "Sofia, I've been thinking a lot about what you told me last time," he began seriously. "I know you're going through a tough time, but I believe there's something more you can do, and I want to help." Still unsure, Sofia looked at Michael with curiosity. He then suggested something Sofia would never have expected. "I know a woman in the city who runs a foundation for young people with limited resources. She's helped a lot of people achieve their dreams, even when it seemed impossible. If you're willing, we could go to the city together and see what we can do." Michael's words were like a ray of hope breaking through the dark clouds that had been hanging over Sofia. However, doubt still haunted her. What if I'm not good enough? What if this is all for nothing? Michael smiled warmly and replied, "You'll never know until you try. We can't let the fear of failure paralyze us. What do we have to lose?" That question echoed in Sofia's heart, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the possibility of something new. Maybe, after all, there was a path to her dream, and maybe she didn't have to face it alone. Michael and Sofia began planning the trip to the city. There was a mix of excitement and nervousness in the air. For Sofia, this was more than just a visit. It was a new chance to believe in herself and the future she wanted. When she told Grandma Helen about the plan, her grandmother smiled with pride, though there was concern about seeing her granddaughter leave for such a distant place. "If this is your path, my dear, I'll always be here, waiting for you. But remember, trust in the Lord, and He will guide your steps." The journey to the city was filled with long moments of reflection for Sofia. As the train moved forward, she looked out the window, watching the landscapes change and wondering what the future held. Every mile traveled felt like a step into the unknown, but also a step toward the possibility of change. Beside her, Michael was calm and confident, which brought Sofia a sense of comfort. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that something good could happen. When they arrived in the city, Sofia was amazed by the bustling streets, the tall buildings, and the feeling of being in a completely different world. Everything there was new and, in a way, intimidating. But at the same time, the city seemed full of opportunities, as if it had been waiting for her. Michael led her through the streets to the foundation's address, and every step they took was a mix of anxiety and anticipation. When they finally arrived, Sofia took a deep breath, feeling her heart race. In that moment, everything she had gone through, Laura's humiliations, the doubts, the fear, seemed distant. She stood before a new door, ready to be opened. And though she didn't know what the future held, Sofia was willing to try. Hope is not the absence of challenges, but the courage to keep going even when the path is uncertain. Chapter 5. The Final Trial. Sofia and Michael stood in front of the large wooden door leading to the Foundation's office. The building, old and imposing, had a welcoming feel despite its grandeur. Sofia's hands trembled slightly as she held the recommendation letter that Michael had secured. It felt as though her entire future depended on this moment. Michael, noticing Sofia's nervousness, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "Remember, you got here on your own merit. No matter what happens, you're already victorious." As they entered, they were greeted by a kind and elegant woman named Mrs. Margaret, who led them to the office of the Foundation's director, a woman named Cecilia. Cecilia had a commanding presence, but her eyes conveyed a warmth that quickly calmed Sofia's anxious heart. After some formalities, Cecilia asked Sofia to share her story and explain why she wanted so much to study in the city. Sofia took a deep breath and began recounting her journey. She spoke of her simple life on the farm, the loss of her parents, and how her grandmother, Grandma Helen, had been her pillar of strength and faith. She also shared her passion for learning and her desire to one day return to her hometown to help others. Cecilia listened attentively, never interrupting, and Sofia felt a genuine connection, as if this woman truly understood what she was going through. But when it came time to talk about Laura and the humiliation she had endured, Sofia's voice faltered. That's when Cecilia, in a gentle tone, said, "Dear, we all face obstacles in life. What defines our future is not what happens to us, but how we respond to those challenges. Your story is one of resilience, and that's exactly what we want to see in young people like you." Cecilia's words brought Sofia an unexpected comfort, and she felt a new strength growing inside her. After a brief silence, Cecilia made an offer that took Sofia by surprise. "Sofia, I'd like to offer you an internship here at our foundation. I know you want to study, but I believe working here for a few months will better prepare you for your academic journey. You'll learn a lot, and at the end of the internship, we can reconsider your scholarship." The offer, though not exactly what Sofia had hoped for, was an invaluable opportunity. It would be her gateway to a future she could barely imagine. Sofia, torn between relief and fear, accepted the offer with gratitude. As they left the foundation, Michael smiled at her and said, "See, I knew you could do it. This is just the first of many doors you'll open." Sofia smiled, but inside, she knew that the real challenge was yet to come. The internship would be tough, and she would be away from her grandmother for the first time. But something inside her had changed. The darkness that had once surrounded her was beginning to give way to a new light. In the days that followed, Sofia adapted to life in the city and to her work at the foundation. Each day brought a new lesson, and although there were moments of difficulty, she began to feel that she was finally on the right path. The distance from Grandma Helen and the farm still weighed on her heart, but her grandmother's letters, filled with wisdom and encouragement, were a comfort during the toughest times. However, even with all the small victories, Sofia knew she still had one last obstacle to face. Laura, the wealthy young woman, hadn't given up on her revenge, and Sofia felt that at any moment, she could be caught off guard by one of Laura's schemes. The confrontation between the two was inevitable, and Sofia knew that to finally put the past behind her, she would have to face it head on. The real power doesn't lie with those who try to knock you down, but in your ability to get back up every time. Chapter 6. The Unexpected Confrontation. Life in the city had begun to stabilize for Sofia, who, with each passing day, felt more confident in her abilities and the path she had chosen. The work at the foundation was challenging but rewarding. She helped young people with life stories similar to her own, and this exchange strengthened her, giving her a new perspective on the purpose she had always desired for her life. However, as her routine settled, something unsettling began to approach silently. Laura. Sofia tried not to think about Laura, but now and then, She remembered the humiliation she had endured in her hometown. It was like a shadow that insisted on following her, even from afar. Although her life was improving, there was something unresolved in her heart, and as if fate had been preparing for an inevitable meeting. On an ordinary afternoon, as Sofia left the foundation, she unexpectedly encountered Laura on the street. The look Laura gave her was enough to reignite the emotions Sofia had fought to leave in the past. The wealthy young woman, with the same air of superiority, watched her from a distance before approaching with a sarcastic smile on her lips. "So here you are, trying to be someone important in the city," Laura sneered in a cold voice. Sofia, surprised to see her, felt her heart race. For a moment, she thought about fleeing the situation, but she knew she couldn't spend her life avoiding Laura or anyone else who tried to bring her down. "I'm just trying to do my part," Sofia replied, trying to stay calm despite the internal turmoil. Laura laughed, as if the response was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. "You've always been like this, so naive. Do you really think working at a foundation will get you anywhere? I always knew you didn't have what it takes to be somebody." Those words, which once would have completely shattered Sofia, now hit her differently. There was pain, of course, but there was also a new understanding. Sofia finally realized that Laura's words came from a place of insecurity and wounded pride. For a moment, she saw something in Laura she had never noticed before: loneliness. Laura, with all her arrogance, was also carrying her own wounds. And it was in that moment that Sofia understood her true battle wasn't with Laura, but with herself. Taking a deep breath, Sofia responded with calmness. "I know who I am and what I want. I don't need you to understand or approve of what I'm doing. That's enough for me." Laura, surprised by Sofia's calm and firm response, was speechless for a brief moment. The confrontation she had expected, the emotional outburst she always managed to provoke in Sofia, didn't happen. And it was in that silence that Sofia knew something had changed forever. Laura tried to maintain her arrogant posture, but it was clear that Sofia was no longer the person she once intimidated. "We'll see how far you get, Sofia," Laura said, turning and walking away without the same confidence she once had. But this time, Sofia wasn't shaken. Watching her leave, Sofia realized she had finally faced her greatest fear: the need for others' approval. And in that moment, she felt freer than ever. As she walked back to the foundation, Sofia reflected on what had happened. Laura, who had once been her greatest adversary, now seemed small compared to Sofia's new understanding. Sofia's true victory wasn't in defeating Laura, but in overcoming the need to prove herself to anyone. It was an internal triumph, a recognition of her own strength and worth. That night, Sofia wrote a long letter to Grandma Helen, sharing everything that had happened. Her grandmother, always wise, would reply a few days later with the words Sofia had been waiting to hear. "You finally found your peace, my dear. The road is long, but your heart is in the right place. Sometimes winning isn't about defeating someone else, but overcoming the fear that lives within us." Chapter 7. The Reconnection with Faith. After the confrontation with Laura, Sofia felt a lightness in her heart that she hadn't experienced in a long time. The weight of the cruel words and humiliations that had once haunted her now seemed to vanish, like a mist dissolving with the first rays of sunlight. There was a new clarity in her mind, a feeling that, finally, she was in control of her own story. However, despite this relief, there was still another internal battle that needed resolution: her faith. Since arriving in the city, Sofia had distanced herself a bit from the religious practices that Grandma Helen had taught her so well. The fast pace of the city, the work at the foundation, and the emotional challenges she faced had left little time to reflect on her connection with God. But now that the emotional storm had begun to calm, Sofia felt a deep need to turn to something greater than herself. One quiet afternoon, Sofia decided to visit a small church near the foundation. She passed by it every day, but had never taken the time or had the courage to go inside. On that day, something urged her to step through the doors of that sacred place. The interior of the church was simple yet welcoming, and a sense of peace washed over her as soon as she sat down in one of the pews. For a few minutes, Sofia simply observed the silence around her, as if waiting for an answer she didn't even know she needed. With her eyes closed, she began to pray silently. It was a different prayer from the one she used to say with Grandma Helen. This time, Sofia didn't ask for anything. She only gave thanks. She gave thanks for the strength she had found within herself, for the people who had supported her, and for the challenges that had shaped her. As the words flowed from her heart, Sofia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a deep reconnection with her faith. After the prayer, she remained seated, reflecting on her journey. Every obstacle, every tear shed, had led her to this moment. It was as if all the pieces of a puzzle had finally come together, revealing a bigger picture she couldn't fully see yet. Sofia understood that, although the road ahead was uncertain, she didn't need to fear. There was something or someone guiding her steps, even when she didn't realize it. As she left the church, Sofia felt renewed. It wasn't just a sense of relief, but a certainty that, no matter what the future held, she wouldn't be alone. Her faith, which once seemed distant, was now more alive than ever, and with this new strength, she felt ready to face any challenge that might come her way. That night, Sofia wrote another letter to Grandma Helen, sharing her experience. "Grandma, I think I finally understand what you always wanted to teach me. Faith isn't just something we have in peaceful moments, but what sustains us when everything seems to be falling apart. Thank you for never letting me forget that." In the days that followed, Sofia continued her work at the foundation with renewed energy. Her relationship with the young people she helped deepened, and they began to see her as a mentor, someone they could trust. Sofia's smile, which once was just a facade to hide her pain, was now genuine and sincere. She was finally at peace with herself and the path she was walking. Faith doesn't eliminate challenges, but it gives us the strength to face them with courage and confidence. Chapter 8. The Call to Make a Difference. With her heart renewed and her faith restored, Sofia began to realize that her journey at the foundation wasn't just about learning new skills or securing the scholarship she had longed for. There was something much bigger happening. Every day, more young people sought her out, looking for advice and support. Sofia had become a role model for those who, like her, came from humble beginnings and faced seemingly insurmountable obstacles. She started to notice that many of the young people who came to the foundation had stories similar to hers. Big dreams, but limited by the circumstances of their lives. Sofia saw herself in each of them and began to dedicate even more of her time and energy to helping them. What had once been just a job became a true mission. She knew she couldn't change the world all at once, but she could make a difference in the life of each young person who crossed her path. One of these young people was Peter, a 17-year-old boy who had lost his parents in an accident and now lived in a shelter for minors. He stood out for his intelligence and determination, but like Sofia, he felt his future was limited by financial constraints. Peter reminded Sofia of her own struggle, and when she saw the spark in his eyes, she felt a deep responsibility to help him find his way. Sofia and Peter began working together on a project at the foundation focused on educating young people in vulnerable situations. The idea was to create free workshops that would teach practical skills and prepare these young people for the job market. The project quickly began to take shape, and with the support of Cecilia and other foundation staff, the first workshops were launched. Sofia led the sessions with dedication, sharing her own life experiences and encouraging the young people not to give up on their dreams, no matter how big the challenge is. As the project grew, Sofia realized she was fulfilling the purpose she had always had, even before she knew it existed. She didn't have to wait until she returned to her hometown to start making a difference. God had placed these opportunities in her path, and now she saw clearly that her mission was to help these young people overcome the barriers the world had placed in front of them. With each smile she saw on the young people's faces, with each small victory, Sofia felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. But as with every journey, new challenges arose. As the project grew and gained recognition, financial difficulties began to emerge. The foundation, which had always survived on donations, was now facing a period of scarcity, putting the continuation of the workshops at risk. Sofia knew she couldn't let everything they had worked for be lost. So once again, she found herself facing a great obstacle. One night, while talking to Michael about the difficulties, he suggested they organize a fundraising event. It would be an opportunity not only to raise the necessary funds, but also to engage the community and spread the word about the foundation's work. Sofia liked the idea but knew it would be a monumental task. It won't be easy, but you've never backed down from a challenge, Sofia. And I'll be by your side, Michael said with an encouraging smile. In that moment, Sofia realized that her fight was just beginning. What had once been a personal battle was now a collective fight for all the young people who depended on that project. And Sofia, with her heart full of faith, knew that with determination and support, she could face this new challenge and come out victorious. When we discover our purpose, no matter the size of the challenge, we are always ready to fight and win. Chapter 9, The Battle for Hope. With the idea of the fundraising event in mind, Sofia dove headfirst into the preparations. She knew this would be the decisive step to ensure the continuation of the project at the foundation. She gathered her team of volunteers, including the very young people who were benefiting from the workshops, and together they began planning every detail of the event. The goal was simple: to bring together as many people as possible to support the cause and showcase the impact the foundation was having on the lives of so many young people. The excitement was palpable, but Sofia knew the road ahead would be tough. With few resources and almost no sponsorship, the team would need to be creative to make the event a success. Sofia spent days visiting local businesses, asking for donations, and trying to win the support of influential entrepreneurs in the city. Every door that closed was a reminder that the fight wouldn't be easy, but Sofia wasn't willing to give up. Each rejection was an opportunity to try again, with more strength and determination. Over the weeks, Sofia began to notice the positive impact the project was having, not only on the young people, but also on the community. The project's beneficiaries themselves started to get involved, helping to spread the word and sharing their stories to attract more donors. Peter, the young man Sofia had helped, stood out by sharing his journey on social media and with friends from his new school. His story inspired others to support the cause, and soon word of the event began circulating throughout the city. However, as the event approached, new obstacles emerged. The venue they had reserved was canceled at the last minute, and Sofia had to scramble to find a new space. Additionally, the funds raised so far were still not enough to cover all the event costs, and the risk of failure loomed over the team like a dark cloud. Despite the pressure, Sofia tried to remain calm and kept faith that everything would work out. The night before the event, Sofia was alone at the foundation, finishing the final preparations. The room was empty, but the weight of responsibility was immense. She knelt right there on the floor and prayed in silence. Lord, I know the road is hard, but I'm not alone. Give me the strength to keep going and to touch the hearts of the people. May this event be for your glory, and may we continue making a difference in the lives of these young people. When she stood up, she felt an indescribable peace. She had done everything within her power, and now she had to trust that things would fall into place. The next morning, when she arrived at the new venue she had secured at the last minute, Sofia was greeted with a sight that almost brought her to tears. Hundreds of people had shown up to support the event. Business owners, community members, and even some influential figures in the city were there to contribute. The event was a success beyond expectations. The young people's stories moved the audience, and donations began to flow in impressively. Peter, with his courage and determination, was one of the highlights, captivating everyone with his heartfelt speech about the importance of education and the opportunity the project had given him. By the end of the night, the amount raised was more than enough to guarantee the continuation of the workshops for many months. Sofia, exhausted but fulfilled, watched everything from a distance with a smile on her face. The fight had been tough, but the result was worth it. And once again, she understood that the trials she faced were part of something greater. God had guided her to this point, and she knew there was still much work to be done. With her faith renewed and her heart full of gratitude, Sofia prepared for the challenges ahead, knowing now that she could face them with her head held high. The greatest victories come from battles that almost made us give up. It is in perseverance that we find our true strength. Chapter 10: Overcoming in the New Journey. The success of the fundraising event brought a wave of hope, not just to Sofia, but to the entire foundation team and the young people who depended on the project. With the necessary resources secured, the workshops continued to grow and transform lives. Sofia, who had started this journey as a young woman full of doubts and fears, had now become a true leader. Her presence at the foundation became indispensable, and her dedication was admired by all. Each week, new young people signed up for the workshops, and the community began to rally around the project. Local businesses that had once been indifferent now wanted to participate, offering donations and internship opportunities for the youth. The foundation, which had once struggled to survive, was now thriving, and Sofia felt that she was finally fulfilling the purpose she had long sought. But even with all these achievements, Sofia knew her journey was far from over. One sunny afternoon, while helping a group of young people with an activity, Cecilia, the foundation's director, asked to speak with Sofia in private. "Sofia, your work here has been extraordinary. You've transformed this foundation, and more importantly, you've transformed so many lives. I have something to offer you." Cecilia paused, and Sofia felt her heart race. "I would like you to take on a leadership role here at the foundation. I want you to be the head coordinator of the workshops." For a moment, Sofia was speechless. The offer was tempting, and she felt she could do even more in the new position. However, there was something in her heart that held her back from accepting right away. She remembered the promise she had made to herself and to Grandma Helen. One day, she would return to her hometown to help her community, bringing with her the knowledge she had gained. Now, faced with a difficult choice, Sofia knew she had to listen to her heart. After a long conversation with Cecilia, Sofia explained her situation. "Cecilia, I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity, and I'm honored by your trust. But I feel that my mission isn't over yet. I need to go back to my hometown to help my community as I've always dreamed. Everything I've learned here has prepared me for that." Cecilia, with an understanding smile, nodded. "I understand, Sofia, and I know that wherever you go, you will continue to make a difference." In the days that followed, Sofia began preparing for the big change. The decision to return to her hometown wasn't easy, but she knew it was the right path. Peter and the other young people at the foundation were saddened by her departure, but Sofia reassured them that they were ready to continue their journeys, armed with everything they had learned. She also promised to visit them whenever she could. On her last night before leaving, Sofia went to the church where she had renewed her faith months earlier. Sitting alone in the pews, she reflected on everything she had experienced since arriving in the city. The pain, the challenges, the triumphs. It had all been part of a greater plan, a plan she now understood was much bigger than herself. With a smile on her face, Sofia prayed one last time there, thanking God for all the lessons and blessings she had received. The next day, Sofia boarded the train back to her hometown. As she looked out the window, familiar landscapes began to appear, and a sense of peace washed over her. She knew she was returning to where it all began, but now with the certainty that she was ready to build something new. Grandma Helen was waiting for her at the station, arms open and a proud smile on her face. As she stepped off the train, Sofia ran to embrace her grandmother, feeling the comfort of finally being home. "Welcome back, my dear," Grandma Helen said, her eyes shining. "I always knew you'd find your way." Sofia smiled, knowing that the true beginning of her journey was just getting started. Overcoming isn't the end of the fight, but the beginning of a new journey, stronger, wiser, and more determined to make a difference.